The NFL, Colin, like nothing surprises me with Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, but this, I mean, my eyes popped out of my head. So there is now a report that even though Max Crosby's staying with the Raiders, the Cowboys tried so hard to land him, they made 3 different offers to the Raiders. Reminder, the Cowboys traded Micah Parsons. They didn't want to pay him. So a year later, or less than a year, maybe 8 months, they tried to get Max Crosby. Here are the reported offers. The Cowboys said, we'll give you the 20th pick and Osa Ugunwanza, I butchered his name,
D-line.
12th pick and the third round pick, 12th overall pick and a second. And the Raiders said, no, we want 2 firsts. Colin, Jerry Jones had Micah Parsons. Now he realized, oh, we need an edge rusher. You can't make this stuff up at this point, Colin. Come on.
Well, they got Rashawn Gary, who's not Max Crosby, but
No.
yeah, I'm surprised Dallas offered that. I mean, I think it's a great edge rusher draft, and Dallas is prized. You know, they have an opportunity to get one of the good edge rushers, and their defensive tackles are excellent. So I'm a little surprised by the story. Sometimes I feel like Jerry's kind of making it up based on a whim or a discussion. I kind of feel like he's kind of making it up. There's not a lot of long range planning.
Yeah.
It's more, how do I feel now? Well, who's the last guy I talked to? That's what it feels like to me.
And by the way, do you think Max Crosby would have been thrilled to go to Dallas? Because he wanted a contender. And last I checked, Dallas is not anything close to a contender. Now, you could argue Baltimore didn't make the playoffs, but they have Lamar Jackson. They're in the playoffs every year practically. Would he have been thrilled to go to Dallas?
Well, it's a huge brand, and Max is a likable guy, relatable guy. I think it would have been great for him, actually. I think he would have done really well there.
Yeah, I don't think you can make the case that they're anywhere near being a legitimate contender. Look, I've said this repeatedly. I fully acknowledge the Dallas Cowboys haven't even reached an NFC championship game in nearly 3 decades. But that offense was clearly the real deal. If you want to question whether Dak and the rest of that unit would have performed well in the postseason, that's a fair debate, because they obviously haven't proven they can deliver and secure wins when it matters most in the playoffs. But setting that aside for a moment, because you could make the exact same argument about Lamar Jackson if you wanted to. I wouldn't say they were that far off, they simply needed a defense that was merely competent. And this is why I've been so critical of how Dallas handled the Micah Parsons situation. I've said this constantly. They made shrewd moves on the offensive side. They even made a smart hire with Schottenheimer, which ended up impressing people and proving a lot of doubters wrong. But they did absolutely nothing to make that defense functional, and instead did everything possible to make it dysfunctional. It turned into a glaring weakness, and because it was such a liability, the team went nowhere. They didn't even qualify for the playoffs. They didn't even make it to the postseason. If that defense had been simply average instead of a complete liability, they could have genuinely made a run. At the very least, an NFC championship appearance was absolutely within reach. That was a realistic possibility. Without question. And that situation is a direct result of the decisions they made. This is where I found the whole narrative amusing. The one that went, well, we'll move on from Micah, but now it's okay to go after Max Crosby. Then when you saw what they were prepared to give up for Max, it just confirmed everything I've been saying. This is literal proof of my point. You're just engaging in meaningless chaos. You're just throwing a typewriter against a wall. You're just splattering paint aimlessly. You're picking random options without any coherent strategy. You're just saying, this one. And this is where I kept pushing back on Colin. Because Colin was saying, oh, it was a really smart move for them to trade Micah. But that's not what they were trying to do. He wanted to keep Micah. He wanted to retain him. And because he lacked the foresight to trade him at the optimal moment, it directly hurt the franchise. Then he tried to spin it as, well, look, we saved money and got these assets in return. But when you consider the draft capital they were willing to surrender for Max Crosby, none of it adds up. It just creates more chaos. Not to mention, if they had simply signed Micah, CD, and Dak when they were supposed to, all 3 would currently be on much more favorable contracts. That's just basic contract timing. There's no speculation required. No guesswork needed. If they hadn't gone through that whole prolonged song and dance, all those players would be on cheaper deals right now. So that's what's so infuriating about the conversations surrounding the Cowboys. Also, I love how everyone said, oh, well, the Cowboys doctors rejected Max Crosby's physical, as if that somehow proves the Baltimore Ravens did everything correctly. Here's the thing, when teams are making trade offers and evaluating these situations, they have access to all the medical scans. Those doctors had all the information about Max Crosby's condition. And yet, they were still aggressively trying to acquire him. That's odd, isn't it? I don't know. The math just doesn't add up there. So, yeah. That's strange, right? You know, going all in for a player like Max Crosby, this is where you have to define who you are as a franchise and what you can realistically achieve. You see the Rams being extremely aggressive because they believe they can win a Super Bowl. They think, we make a couple of the right moves this offseason, regardless of cost, and we can legitimately win it all. Straight up. You have to figure out who the Cowboys are. Because if you're going to take a big swing, you need to understand, does adding Max Crosby make the difference between winning and losing a Super Bowl? And if the answer is no, then that swing is too ambitious. And this is the problem with not knowing what Dak, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Schottenheimer, and the rest will look like in the postseason. And this is the problem stemming from their incompetence throughout the entire season. They didn't play a playoff game. We didn't see them in that environment. We saw them in a must-win game against Detroit, and they still got dominated. That was a critical moment, and it didn't go well. You just think, what if that had been a playoff game? That's the frustrating part, you don't even have that data point now. What was Dak's last playoff appearance? 2023? And they got obliterated. That was under a different coaching staff, before Dak dealt with another injury. So now you're talking about years later, a new head coach, a new coordinator, a new receiver, a lot of new pieces. And you're left wondering, how is this team going to perform in the playoffs? I have no idea. How is Schottenheimer going to look in the playoffs? I have no idea. I have no clue. You don't have a foundation to build from. Meanwhile, a team like the Rams just saw themselves in the NFC Championship game. They know exactly what they are. They know exactly what Puka Nacua, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, Blake Corum, and Karen Williams bring to the table in the postseason. They know how they perform against a significant opponent like the Seattle Seahawks. So, they know precisely what they need. That allows them to weigh all the pros and cons of their decisions effectively. The Dallas Cowboys don't have that clarity. They lack that perspective. And that's where foresight becomes essential. That's where having a vision is critical. And this is what led to my rant yesterday, where I was talking about how they ended up acquiring George Pickens for essentially nothing. You could have probably signed him to a longer-term deal at a significant discount. You could have used your leverage, since it seemed like no one else wanted him, and his career was legitimately trending downward. But if you have the vision, if you have the understanding, you think, the Pittsburgh Steelers are a mess. They have no quarterback. We have Dak. I'm hiring Schottenheimer. I believe he's a great offensive coach. George Pickens is going to thrive here. Then you lock him into a great contract before any of this unfolds. Instead, you're saying, well, we don't know if we want to keep him. Then you're looking at the franchise tag. You're just making everything messy, eh? You're making things harder for yourself. You're complicating not only the process of building a roster, but also the assessment of what you actually need at this moment and what you're going to get from the players you already have. So, this is where the Dallas Cowboys are genuinely fascinating. Because we see this year after year after year. It's always, oh, this team is actually pretty good. Also, this team is not good at all. Oh, this team can make a playoff run. Also, this team is going to lose, and it's going to be an ugly playoff defeat. Oh, this team blows out a mediocre opponent. And then they struggle against a legitimate contender. It's just constant whiplash. I'm excited. No, I'm not. Oh, they could be. No, they can't. And that's literally how their off-seasons go. That's exactly how they play out. You're just left feeling uncertain. And heading into this season right now, I essentially feel the exact same way I've felt about the Dallas Cowboys for the last 5 or 6 years. This is what I said when they first acquired Pickens and Schottenheimer. It was, they're going to have moments where they look absolutely dominant, and they'll blow out weak teams. They'll play a few tough games against good opponents, and they'll look completely overmatched in others. It's going to be the exact same pattern we've witnessed year after year after year. I see no reason why that will magically change. I see no reason whatsoever. None. The only way I could see that potentially shifting is if, in this year's draft, they select someone who immediately makes everyone say, they just landed the greatest player. And that player shows it instantly. Where you're thinking, oh my gosh. This guy is an absolute monster. He's got to win Rookie of the Year. I don't know, first team All-Pro, he's getting every accolade. Is it crazy to say Defensive Player of the Year? Offensive Player of the Year? You're just in awe. Kind of like what people thought about Ayak at the beginning of that season, when everyone was saying, oh my gosh, is he already a top 3 receiver in the NFL? And people were reacting, what am I even watching right now? Obviously, that hype settled down a bit. But it's that version, the first handful of weeks of an Ayak-type emergence, except it sustains for the entire season. Whether it's an edge rusher or whatever position you think the Cowboys need most, outside of that scenario, I just see another identical season to what we've witnessed over these past several years. And that has to be incredibly frustrating. Because it just makes me think of that quote from Modern Family, what's the plan here? What's the plan? What are you doing to actually take a step forward that's meaningful, not just marginal? You didn't make the playoffs last season. You missed the postseason entirely. Yes, you had free agency. Yes, you made some moves. And now you'll potentially be more competent, which matters. But at this point, you wasted that last season. So again, what's the plan? What's the plan? I'd genuinely love to know. Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some debates. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you be a part of it. I want to build something that we all feel connected to. Something that we're genuinely excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.